Daniel loved the night shift, sorting through documents for a few hours before wasting the rest browsing the internet. It's not like his boss would be there, hanging over his shoulder, so he had freedom to reign over the empty office. It wasn't long into his shift before he was rudely interrupted by a call, one from a number he didn't recognize. "Client at this hour," he mumbled to himself, as he studied the number on his mobile phone. "Daddy," a young boy sobbed into the phone, the familiar voice of his son, Alexander. "Hey buddy, what's wrong? Whose phone are you calling from? They are going to take me away." Daniel, now fully awake and alert, clutched his phone harder. What's happening, Alex?" His son just continued sobbing into the phone, sulking out a couple of incomprehensible words. Had he had a nightmare? Daniel wondered hopefully to himself. "Alex, is Mommy there?" "No," he responded. "Where is she?" "They already killed her, and now they are taking me away." A loud jittery sound emitted from the phone and the call broke. In a panic, Daniel was torn between redialing the last number and calling the police, but it was no use because his phone had inexplicably died. There were no landlines at the office anymore, so he had no choice but to run for his car and drive like a madman back home. Each second on the road felt like an eternity wasted as he was driving at almost twice the speed limit, all the while checking if his phone would come back to life. As he returned home, he saw a silhouette of a man standing in the driveway. He appeared to be an elderly man, completely hairless and wearing a suit. Instinctively he slammed the brakes, which caused him to violently jerk forward, hitting his head on the steering wheel. When he looked back up, the man had vanished, all in the space of 2 seconds. "Alex, Mia," he called out for his family as he ran into his house. The door was unlocked and he was fearing the worst. There they both lied, calmly asleep on the sofa, alive and well, though his wife was slightly shook by his loud entrance. "Hey honey," Mia said in a sleepy voice, and Alexander, barely noticing that he had entered. Daniel composed himself a bit, relieved that his family was fine. After a brief discussion, Alexander denied having called, claiming to have been asleep for at least a few hours while watching a film, which Mia confirmed. "I was going to put him to bed after the movie, but we just both fell asleep," Mia said. Daniel's phone was permanently broken, but he logged in online to check his call record. There were none listed, save for a single call, originating from 1 week forward in time. By the look of the apartment, with its bare walls and boxes scattered about, one would assume the man had just moved in. Truth is, he had lived there for 5 months at this point. After his son died, his marriage disintegrated almost immediately. His wife, who was already in a near constant state of depression, seemed to completely shut down after their loss, hardly speaking a word to the man, or anyone else for that matter. The man assumed that she, like himself, blamed him for their son's death. The night it happened, he was the one that found his son's body, in the boy's room, with Daddy's gun. That was the last night his wife spoke to him. "Did you remember to lock the safe?" she asked, and in his mind, the man knew he had. But when he opened his mouth to defend himself, the words he mustered were, "I can't remember." His certainty about securing his gun when he got home that night had faded to doubt, and he was never able to say for sure what exactly happened. That's even what he told the cops. "I can't remember." And now, 5 months later, in his cold, empty apartment, the man has decided he can't live with the guilt any longer. He may not have pulled the trigger, but as far as we was concerned, he murdered his own son. So he opens a box, just one box, the box, and pulls out his gun. He holds the barrel to his temple. His eyes are closed and he's holding his breath, and he hears something that breaks his concentration. "Daddy." He exhales and opens his eyes to see, standing in the doorway of the bedroom, his son. The therapist said this may happen, but this feels so much more real than he expected. He looks into his son's eyes, and through the welling tears says to him, "I'm so sorry, it's not your fault." The boy replies, and that's all the man needed to hear. At once, the guilt and pain, and personal torture he had lived with for all these months is lifted. He drops to his knees, weeping, and sets the gun on the floor. The boy continues, "It's not your fault, Daddy. Mommy shot me." "We bought an old house, my boyfriend and I. He's in charge of the new construction, converting the kitchen into the master bedroom for instance, while I'm on wallpaper removal duty. The previous owner papered every wall and ceiling. Removing it is brutal, but oddly satisfying. The best feeling is getting a long peel. similar to your skin when you're peeling from a sunburn. I don't know about you, but I kinda make a game of peeling, on the hunt for the longest piece before it rips. Under a corner section of paper in every room is a person's name and a date. Curiosity got the best of me one night when I googled one of the names and discovered the person was actually a missing person, the missing date matching the date under the wallpaper. The next day, I made a list of all the names and dates. Sure enough, each name was for a missing person with dates to match. We notified the police, who naturally sent out the crime scene team. I overheard one text say, "Yup, it's human." Human? What's human? Mum, where is the material you removed from the walls already? This isn't wallpaper you were removing. My daughter woke me around 11:50 last night. My wife and I had picked her up from her friend Sally's birthday party, brought her home, and put her to bed. My wife went into the bedroom to read while I fell asleep watching the Braves game. "Daddy," she whispered, tugging my shirt sleeve. "Guess how old I'm going to be next month?" "I don't know, beauty," I said as I slipped on my glasses. "How old?" She smiled and held up 4 fingers. "It is 7:30 now. My wife and I have been up with her for almost 8 hours. She still refuses to tell us where she got them." A man went to a hotel and walked up to the front desk to check in. The woman at the desk gave him his key and told him that on the way to his room, there was a door with no number that was locked and no one was allowed in there. Especially no one should look inside the room, under any circumstances. So he followed the instructions of the woman at the front desk, going straight to his room, and going to bed. The next night his curiosity would not leave him alone about the room with no number on the door. He walked down the hall to the door and tried the handle. Sure enough, it was locked. He bent down and looked through the wide keyhole. Cold air passed through it, chilling his eye. What he saw was a hotel bedroom, like his, and in the corner was a woman whose skin was completely white. She was leaning her head against the wall, facing away from the door. He stared in confusion for a while. He almost knocked on the door, out of curiosity, but decided not to. He crept away from the door and walked back to his room. The next day, he returned to the door and looked through the keyhole. This time, all he saw was red. He couldn't make anything out besides a distinct red color. Perhaps the inhabitants in the room knew he was spying the night before, and had blocked the keyhole with something red. At this point he decided to consult the woman at the front desk for more information. She sighed and said, "Did you look through the keyhole?" The man told her that he had, and she said, "Well, I might as well tell you the story. A long time ago, a man murdered his wife in that room, and her ghost haunts it. But these people were not ordinary. They were white all over, except for their eyes, which were red.